There we go. Goodness, we actually still go. All right, realize.
Hi, good morning. This is April Rain, and I am sitting in as guest host for the Benjamin Dixon show today. I'm really excited to be back here again. The last one I did wasn't horrible, and so Ben decided that he had nobody else. And so here I am to do it one more time for him. And so I appreciate the fact that you're joining me today. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to talk about, but extemporaneous speaking is sort of my thing, and we'll see how that goes. Now, if it turns out to be horrible, then extemporaneous speaking is not my thing, and we're just going to roll with it. But what I want to start out talking about today is um, the Oscar So White campaign that I started in January. So if you are tuning into me for the first time, I'm April Rain, and you can find me at Reign of April, REIGN of April, everywhere, on Twitter specifically, but also on Facebook and on Instagram and on Tumblr. And if you go to my website, it's reignofApril.com. And so in January, after seeing the nominees for the Academy Awards, I was frustrated, not surprised, because things happen, and not much surprises me these days. But I was disappointed with the the lack of diversity and inclusion in the Oscar Awards nominees. So I think I was sitting at home, and the first thing I tweeted was, "Oscar so white, they asked to touch my hair." And that sort of set off a viral firestorm that I never could have imagined. Um, and things just took off from there. And it started a conversation, which was the whole goal, which is always the goal on Twitter, right? To start a conversation about diversity and inclusion in Hollywood. And for me, it was about not just in front of the camera, but also behind the camera. So, for example, the movie Selma was nominated for Best Film, but all of the principles that made up Selma were not nominated, which didn't make sense to me. So, in other words, the Academy was saying, Selma is a great film. It's one of the top 10 films of the year, but the actors and actresses that, acted in the film, but the director, Ava DuVernay, the cinematographer and the screenwriter, none of those people were worthy, even though without them, the movie literally couldn't be made. But it's one of the best films of the year. So that didn't make a lot of sense to me. It seemed like almost the Academy was throwing us a bone with respect to giving us the film, but not giving us the principles for the film. So I think that the conversation was healthy and necessary because everyone started talking about how films are nominated, who makes up the Academy, and the fact that the Academy is overwhelmingly white, older males, and um, whether they should still be the ones voting on the films, and how one can increase diversity in Hollywood when the status quo has no incentive to change, right? So if you're an older white man, and this group of people says, let's have some younger people coming in to vote on films and to ensure that these films get made, what's your incentive to say, yes, let's bring them in? Let's change, let's threaten what I have known for the last 20, 30, 40 years and bring in all these new people whom I don't know. So even though the Academy president, Cheryl Boone Isaacs, is an African American woman, she has a hard road to hoe. And, I talked about last time politics and President Obama and Congress and sort of this checks and balances system that we have. And that's also true for Cheryl Boone Isaacs. So, for example, even if she wanted to shake things up and say, if you haven't been involved in film in the last 10 years, then maybe you can't vote, because maybe you haven't seen the films or you're not familiar with who's out there and what's new, and you're voting for Clint Eastwood, or other older white male actors because those are the people with whom you're comfortable, and those are the people that you know, and maybe you're not even watching the newer films because you figure, if it's Clint Eastwood, it's got to be good, and so I'll just vote for that one. So even if Cheryl Boone Isaacs wanted to shake things up, she still has the Academy to deal with because they're the ones that have to decide and vote on how people are brought into the Academy, right? So, and the way that you can be brought into the Academy now, there are, I think, just three ways. One is that you have to be nominated for a film, So if older white men are not watching the films that tell the stories of people of color and marginalized communities, then those films won't get nominated. And if those actors and actresses and everyone else that works on the film, screenwriters and cinematographers and costume designers and so on. And so if they are not nominated, then how can they become members of the Academy, right? So it's a really horrible catch-22. So the one way is to win, and the other way, one way is to win, and the another way is to have two current Academy members nominate you, and sponsor you for membership into the Academy. And again, if you're an older white man, then maybe the people that you feel most comfortable with are not the young upstarts, whether they're women or people of color, or transgender people, or any marginalized community. Again, let's keep the status quo, which is older white men, and wait for them to die off, or I guess that's the solution. I'm not sure. So anyway. So I talked a lot about Oscar So White in January and February, and we had, I think, really healthy conversations. And I'm not sure where that's going to go. I hope it goes someplace positive where people are at least taking notice of the lack of diversity and inclusion in Hollywood. And I am specifically speaking about both in front of and behind the camera. So it's not just the actors and actresses, but for example, again, in Selma, that's like our touchstone, right, for 2015, a movie that was horribly snubbed for so many reasons. For Selma, my understanding is that the team behind the film was not able to secure the rights to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's speeches. And so they all had to be written by the screenwriter, and not, so they weren't his speeches. And yet when you see the film, you don't think, oh, this doesn't sound like anything Martin would say. It sounds exactly like him. So the fact that this screenwriter didn't get a nomination for Selma is incredulous to me, because the speeches were amazing and they sounded just like him, and spoke to the period of the civil rights movement, and and yet they were completely brand new. They were not letters from a Birmingham jail or anything like that. They were speeches that were created out of whole cloth. And yet no nomination, and David Oyelowo, no nomination. Ava DuVernay as director, no nomination. I mean, we can go on and on, but I don't want to stay on Selma too much. I want to talk about, in general, diversity and inclusion on both sides of the camera, because really the problem is at the studio level, right? It's the people who have the ability to greenlight films. So, for example, we see that Tyler Perry had to literally create his own studio so that he could get the movies made that he wants to make. And in 2015, that's just not the way it should be. And in fact, even though he can do that, Tyler Perry still has to go through the distribution process, which is not his own, as far as which is my understanding, that it's not his own. So he still needs to go through Lionsgate or New Media or another production company to get things out there and distributed. And so it's important not only to get the films made, but to get the films out there so people can see them. So, that was another thing. They did not send out the mailers for Selma in time for other awards organizations to be able to see. The screeners were not sent out in time. And yet the screeners for American Sniper were, even though American Sniper in several markets came out after Selma, and yet it received a lot more nominations, in part because American Sniper had better distribution and more support, in my mind, from the organization, from the distribution company, from the production company that was pushing it than Selma did. So it's one thing to make the films, it's another to stand behind the films and support them and make sure that they actually get out there and people see them, so that you can have good box office numbers, and in addition, so that you can get the nominations, because nominations matter, right? And we can talk about whether they should and what nominations really mean, especially to people of color and those in marginalized communities. But, for better or for worse, right now, the Academy is still considered the upper echelon of film. So, we have seen that once you become nominated, and obviously once you win, it's easier for people to make other films very often. It's easier for actors and actresses to demand higher salaries for the next film. It's easier to get your next film greenlit once you can say, you're an Oscar nominated something or other, or Oscar winning something or other. So, I want to transition a little bit from Oscars in general and just talk about diversity and inclusion in Hollywood, in art in general, because it's bigger than just the Oscars. The Oscars is just one show. And we can also talk about how it's so very important to support our own shows, to support, if we're talking about music, to support the Soul Train Awards. If we're talking about film, to overall, and TV, to support the NAACP Image Awards, and the ALMA Awards, ALMA, and there are so many other organizations and acknowledgments that are out there that we don't support because I'm not sure why, because we think they're not of the same caliber, which isn't true, or, we think that the Oscars is the end all be all, which isn't true either. But in fact, we say, we need to make our own, we need to create our own, but it's just as important that we support our own. And I think that's coming back a little bit. I think with the advent of Black Girls Rock, which is fantastic, and a fantastic way for us to celebrate Black women, that we don't get otherwise. I think that's going well. And I think in general we're realizing that the Grammy Awards are not going to, and the Billboard Music Awards and the American Music Awards, are not going to support us the way we should be supported, based on our talent and our merit and our contribution to the craft. And so we need to go to the Soul Train Music Awards, for example, so that we can really get the recognition that we deserve. So let's talk about the people who are in R&B categories for the Grammys. And 20 years ago, that's not R&B, or that's not even pop, or how is it that you're calling this particular artist rhythm and blues when they're really crossover pop artists and they're not really speaking to the culture of rhythm and blues. And we can talk about the rap categories, and I just let's not. I'm not. No, I can't do it. But it's unfortunate, and so that's why I think we need to have our own. And just as much as we need to have our own, we need to support our own. So if we keep talking about diversity and inclusion in Hollywood on both sides of the camera, we can sort of move on to TV. And the fact that TV seems to be the vanguard right now for people of color and for transgender people for LGBT people and all marginalized people, and women, who also intersect, talk about intersectionality, who intersect in all of those categories. So, Black women and Black transgender women and Black lesbians and so on, and Hispanic and Asian. So there are a lot of, I love Venn diagrams, right? So, you've got these circles and we've got intersections and connections of, who we're really talking about. But I'm talking about everybody other than straight white males. That's where we are, right? So I think the TV is the new breaking ground for us. And I want to get right off the bat, I want to talk about this black is the new black thing. Because no, just stop saying that. That's not right. Just don't do that. Don't stop doing that. All you media people, stop. Okay, because the term is the new black, blank is the new black, comes from, talking about fashion and fads and what's new and hot right now. And my blackness is not a fad. It's with me all the time, every single day, 24/7, 365. And so whether you are into me that particular week or you're not, I'm still black all the time. So it's not, so my race, my heritage is not up for debate, and it's not the newest fad or style. In the same way, there was an article recently about transgender being the new black. It's not. That's just who transgender people are, all the time. So, the fact that people seem to be more interested in stories of transgender people now, in the experiences and the rich history of transgender people and people of color and marginalized communities is one thing, and you can say that those who are not part of the community are now finally taking notice and being interested in us, and in transgender people and in all marginalized communities. But that's you, that's the fact that you are now finally waking up to the fact that there are people outside of your safe little circle whose stories are rich and complex and deep and beautiful and should be told. Okay, that's you. That's not us. So maybe you're the new black because, how about knowledge is the new black, right? Or acceptance is the new black. Let's make that the thing. So when we look at TV, that seems to be coming along a lot faster than film is, because let's look at all the shows from the 2014-2015 season, right? We still have Scandal, which has been around for a while, but we also have, Shonda Rhimes just killing the game. Like she's got the Midas touch. Everything she touches, turns to an instant ratings hit. So she's got How to Get Away with Murder. She's got Scandal. Blackish is a breakout hit, fantastic show. I highly recommend Blackish. I watch it every week, and I'm not sure how it stays fresh, but it speaks to my experience, as a Black middle class person, with a family. So there are a lot of touchstones in there for me. So that's a great show. Fresh Off the Boat is a new show about an Asian family. And, we definitely see much more inclusion and diversity on TV than we are seeing in film. And it's not clear why, because the argument at one point was, well, Black stars cannot open films, which, come on. Come on. So like I can give you two words: Will Smith. Okay, like Will Smith used to be Mr. Summer, right? Between Independence Day and Men in Black, he was the man, and he could open a film to everyone. So it wasn't just a Black film. He was a Black actor starring in a great film, and everybody went to go see those films, right? They were all blockbusters. So he can do it. Denzel Washington is another. He can open a film. He just did Equalizer, which had really good numbers. And people are going to see his film the same way that they go see Clint Eastwood or Al Pacino or Dustin Hoffman or whomever you want to name, because it's Denzel, and because he typically 99% of the time does not make bad films, especially not in the last 10 or 15 years, and we can talk about the Mighty Quinn, but we're going to give him a pass on that because he was cute. But that may not have been his best film. But moving on. And I think that, and you look at Tyler Perry films, right, which are supposedly cater to the Black experience, and yet they have crossover appeal for sure. And Tyler Perry makes money. This, regardless of whether you appreciate his films or you think that they are lacking in something, or they are not of the caliber of some others, doesn't really matter because the numbers, the money speaks for itself. So obviously, Black people can open film. And so that can't be the excuse as to why we don't see more of us on the screen. And, again, I go back to behind the camera, we need our stories told. So, in addition to the blockbuster films that come out that star people of color and people from marginalized communities, which is important and vital, we also need stories like, Beasts of the Southern Wild. We also need Belle. We also need all the other stories that that tell our experience and give us a semblance of who we are every single day. So, and I understand that it costs more money to make movies, and it costs more for distribution and all of that, but it still needs to happen. So back to TV, and the fact that things seem to be coming, things seem to be coming along a lot better on TV than they are in film. And we're seeing a lot more of that, and so now for the 2015-2016 season, there are even more shows because, again, under the theory that shows about people of color and shows about marginalized communities are in, all the networks are scrambling. Look at Empire. I mean, Empire's on Fox, like the same Fox that shows Fox News, and Empire is doing phenomenal numbers. It's a great hit. And shout out, by the way, to Eric Haywood, who is a friend of mine and one of the writers on Empire. Do your thing, sir, for season 2. And it's a fantastic show. And but it's not a Black show. And I think I want to touch on that for just a minute because as far, it tells the story of a family who is Black, but the themes are universal and can apply to any family. A family that is struggling and has secrets, and if you wanted to, you can make it like a mafia story, or you can make it a story, about almost any family, and so. When we talk about ratings and things like that, Empire is doing incredibly well, especially for its first season. And you have to ask, who's watching, right? Because I've never seen a Nielsen box, so I don't know what that looks like. I don't know anybody that has, but it can't be only Black people that are watching the Black show of Empire, right? Because we don't have Nielsen boxes, and there aren't enough of us watching, with respect to just the numbers that are coming in. Everybody's watching Empire, but it can't just be Black people that are driving the numbers, because we just don't make up enough of the population, for it to be doing the numbers that it is. So that tells you that Empire, for example, is a crossover hit and is not just appealing to Black people and people of color, because everybody is watching the show. So if we talk about then what's coming up, there are going to be a lot of new shows, in the fall that have been greenlit or have pilots. One of them is Quantico, which I'm really excited about. That's going to be starring Anjanou Ellis, who most recently you saw as Aminata in the Book of Negroes miniseries that premiered on CBC, the Canadian Broadcast Company, and then was shown exclusively on BET right around MLK Day. And so that, oh, excuse me, for Black History Month, that was on. And so that is going to be a very interesting show. It's a drama that's going to be on, hopefully. It's in pilot mode right now. And so there are, look at Viola Davis, the fact that she is helming, How to Get Away with Murder. And, that story isn't necessarily about a Black lawyer, right? The story is about a lawyer who is Black, and who but is unapologetically Black, so her Blackness is a part of who she is, but it's my understanding that's not how the character was written originally. But once Viola interviewed and auditioned for the part and killed it, it was rewritten for her specifically. So, and that's what we want, right? And what we want is the ability to audition. Because we have scores and scores of talented actors and actresses and screenwriters and producers and playwrights and cinematographers and costume designers, and and all we need is the shot to get in the room and prove our worth and our merit. But the problem is getting into the room. The problem is the agents having the ability to set those meetings, because everything should be written for the best possible actor or actress, if that's what we're talking about right now, right? So I am not saying, we need more Black television. We do, but I'm not saying that there needs to be a quota system or something like that, like 10%, we're 13% of the population, so 13% of the shows on TV need to be Black. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that when the people that greenlight film and TV pilots, when they sit down and say, what do we want to see? We need people at the table to say, I want to see the stories of marginalized people. That's what needs to be said. And even if we're, because those stories will translate into box office success. We already know that. We've seen that. It's been proven. And what we need are the ability to have screenwriters and writers in general for TV as well, be able to tell the stories unapologetically and not have to whitewash our experiences, and then have those stories told. That's what we need. And then when you're talking, when we're pitching and we're talking about, an accountant who, I don't know, finds a mistake, and, so there's $1 million sitting out there, and he needs to figure out, whether he should tell his boss or run off with the money, and, and whether that's a comedy or drama or whatever. I mean, I'm just making that up off the top of my head. That accountant needs to be seen just as an accountant and not as a white male. So maybe the accountant is a woman. Maybe the accountant is an Asian person. Maybe the accountant is a Latina. Maybe the accountant, is differently abled. Maybe the accountant is transgendered, and so that's what it needs to be. So I need, for those who greenlight projects, to think with a more open mind about who they want to see, and allow everyone to audition and figure out who the best possible person for that role is, and then say, as they did with How to Get Away with Murder and Viola Davis, oh, okay, so the best person for this part is Viola Davis, and she's a Black woman, so let's now rewrite her character so that we are discussing and being true to who she is as a Black woman. So, for example, that famous scene, when Viola Davis sat at her dressing table and took the tissue and wiped the makeup off of her face and took off her wig and just stood there, in sort of raw defiance. I mean, that was a revolutionary moment for TV, and that shouldn't be underestimated. Like, when have you ever seen that happen in TV or film to that extent, right? And that was a Black woman moment, the fact that she goes to bed, that Viola Davis goes to bed with a scarf on her head, that's a Black woman thing. That's what we do. And so I think those little things are so very important because they speak to our experience as people of color, and yet it's not ramming something down your face. Viola Davis is not running around, with, I don't know, with T-shirts on or what have you, with quotes on them or whatever. It's not hokey. It's not fake. It's just she's a Black woman, and so this is going to be part of her experience because that's what Black women experience. That's it. And it's not that difficult, but it still speaks truth to our culture. So in the fall, we're going to see a lot more people of color and transgender people and people from marginalized communities and LGBT people on our TV screens, and we need to support them, right? And if they're good, like, I'm not saying, okay, you have to watch crap because there's a person of color on it, and because again, you don't have a ratings box, you don't have a Nielsen's box on your TV, but I'm saying that when you do see a show that you enjoy, whether it's a comedy or drama, whether it's Empire or Blackish or Fresh Off the Boat, or any of the new shows coming out, support them by word of mouth, by watching them. And it's important that a lot of times TV shows come on at the same time. They're pitted against each other. So it's important that if you watch one live and DVR the other one, that you watch the DVR show within 7 days, and if you can, 3 days of the actual live showing of the show, not live, but the initial broadcast of the show, so that the show will still get its ratings points from the DVR show. Like, so don't let it sit on your DVR, as I do way too often, for weeks before, and then do a marathon session. Okay, I'm going to watch 4 episodes of X show. But if you do that, then the show doesn't get the ratings for the first 3 episodes because it's been too long since they've actually premiered. So, and then, tell your friends, like, you're watching me on YouTube right now. So you should be on social media, whatever you use, and say, you know what, I like this show because you have influence as well. And that makes a difference, as to whether shows get picked up. If you've got a favorite actor or actress, follow them and promote them whenever you can, because people are watching. Like, how many things have we seen happen on Twitter and other social media because of public interest and sometimes outcry and outrage, right? It happens all too often. So don't think that you don't have a voice, because you do. And once you amplify that voice, it can make a difference with respect to, whether your favorite show gets picked up for another season, whether, what the DVDs are going to look like, the extras on the DVDs and that kind of thing. So all of that is important. And I'm excited about the new fall season coming out, because I think that we're going to see a lot more shows that tell our story, and that's always a good thing. So even if you can't get down with the show, the fact that it's out there means that things are changing slowly but surely. That we're coming along, and it's giving more people behind the scenes the opportunity to make shows that you might like in the future, even if you don't like that particular show. So that's what you have to think about. It's not just the actors that are in front of the camera, but it's also all of the people, the crew, the screenwriters, the directors, all those other people who are also going to be involved. Like Debbie Allen, who I remember from Fame days way back in the day. She is such an accomplished director now, even though she started out sort of as a dancer and then an actress. Now she's known as a director, and she's going to be very involved in the fall in directing shows, which is fantastic because she's very, very gifted in really everything she does, and this will be no different. Um, so I think what I just want to say is that diversity and inclusion in Hollywood and where have you are important. The fact that we now have Netflix and Amazon producing their own shows. House of Cards is huge, and it's on Netflix and it's winning all kinds of awards on Netflix. Which is something that would have been unheard of 5 or 10 years ago. But again, it gives us more opportunity to get our shows seen, and the distribution is a lot easier once it's made than it is for TV. Excuse me, than it is for movies, and that's why I think we're seeing that TV is doing a better job of telling our stories. And it's about time. Right? It's about time. I mean, because if you look back to the 80s and the 90s, it's like we didn't exist, which, I mean, okay, so like Friends, right? Friends. Everybody watched Friends in the 80s. But there were never any black people on Friends until like the last season. And then I think it was Aisha Tyler, I think, who played Ross's love interest for a little while. But that was like the last season. And so you are hard pressed to find people of color at all. They spent 80% of the time in that coffee shop, and did you even see like another person of, any person, I can't say another because there wasn't a first, any person of color just sipping coffee. Like we do that, we drink coffee, and they were in New York. So where were they? Sex of the City is another one. Even walking down the street, can you get some black extras on Sex and the City? Just, I mean, Carrie is out there. They're sitting there walking through Central Park. We walk, Latina women walk, so can't you have some of them in the background? Is that asking too much? It wasn't until, what was it, the movie? Well, no, in the series, Blair Underwood played the love interest of Miranda for a while. And see, I have way too much Sex and the City knowledge. But anyway, he did, and he was good. And and I thought, I appreciated his character. But again, that was close to the end of the show. And then in the Sex and the City movie, we had Jennifer Hudson play Carrie's assistant. So she still was not a full-fledged character, right? She was just there literally at the beck and call of Carrie Bradshaw. So, she didn't have her own life. It wasn't, and obviously Sex and the City is about those 4 women. I get it. But, you're just throwing folks in there at the end to say that you have some inclusion. And Girls on HBO, even now, I mean, hey, Lena Dunham and I are not friends. And we will never be friends for many, many reasons. But one of the reasons is that she has a show based in Brooklyn, and it's the most gentrified looking Brooklyn you've ever seen, as if there are no black people in Brooklyn. And Lena, come on, really, right? And she changed that because there was backlash, and so she had a love interest, not unlike Sex and the City. Hello for originality. She had a love interest for a little while, and now he's gone. And so I don't watch the show, but now it's my understanding that they're kind of back to, the Lily White version of white female angst that they were before. So, and again, how hard is it to include people from marginalized communities in your show, even as extras, but more importantly, as characters that are sort of fully fleshed out and realized. And I think that's why, we're getting better with television, and we have more shows with leads from marginalized communities, especially Black people right now. And I go back to Blackish because I just love that show. But it's about a Black family, and Larry Wilmore is, I believe, the executive producer, maybe. And we know Larry Wilmore from Comedy Central and The Nightly Show because he's the one who replaced Stephen Colbert once retired. So that is a big thing, right? The fact that we have a Black man doing a late night show like that and following Jon Stewart, who is also retiring, and guess who's replacing Jon Stewart, right? It's another Black man. So we're going to have a full hour of nightly news. I'm using my air quotes, news on Comedy Central in two very esteemed positions. So that's amazing, right? And again, it's TV, so it's not film. So I'm excited. I think that we're going to see, once people sort of get comfortable with the fact that, Black people can read the news, or spoof the news just as well as white people can. Once people start realizing that the stories that Fresh Off the Boat tells, or Blackish tells, are stories that speak to your family, your experience just as well. You can see yourself in those stories. When you look at How to Get Away with Murder and Empire, like those stories as dramas are just as gripping as stories with white male leads. I think that hopefully the psyche will soften to the extent that we can have even more of those shows, and again, it becomes more commonplace that we're just going to tell these stories, and they happen to have Black leads, or we're specifically going to tell stories of people from marginalized communities, and you will deal. And in fact, not only that, you will enjoy that because because they're interesting stories. That's it. Because interesting comes to Latinas and Latinos and Hispanic people and Black people and Asian people and transgender people and LGBT people. We all have stories that must be told. There is this richness and complexity and nuance to our stories that we're not getting. That's coming along a little bit, but we're still not getting it just yet. And so I say to screenwriters and writers in general, keep writing, keep submitting. Don't get discouraged, because it seems like this is the time, right? It seems like if anybody is looking for stories of people of color, 2015 is your shoot your shot moment, because they have been accepted more than ever before. So keep going. If you're a struggling actor and actress, and who isn't? Like, everybody's struggling. Everybody still has to audition. Stay with it. Stay with it, because it seems like now is the time. Keep pushing your agent. Keep going on those auditions. And hopefully we'll see significant change in the near future as people begin to realize, people meaning the people in power, who are still, once again, going way back to the beginning, the straight white males who are greenlighting these projects, see that it's all about the bottom line for them. So once they see that the numbers are good, they're going to want more of those shows. And that's what's happening. The fact that Empire did so well, the fact that Blackish is doing so well, Scandal, and How to Get Away with Murder, and so on, only means that more of these shows will be told. So, for you and me and the other people who are sitting on their couch, keep watching, keep supporting, keep talking up your favorite shows. For those who are involved in the industry, keep fighting. Because hopefully this is your moment, and we'll see where it comes, where it goes after in the next year or so. But I'm excited about the prospects, because I think that now is the time to tell the stories of everyone that aren't being told. So I think that's it for me. This is April Rain once again. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to Ben Dixon once again for allowing me to co-host the Benjamin Dixon Show once again. And I think you'll see me maybe once more next week. We'll see how that goes. If you're looking for me once again, it's Reign of April, REIGN of April, on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and my own website. Support, again, support is always, it's very important. If you enjoyed this, go back and watch some of the old episodes and webcasts of the Benjamin Dixon Show, because he's great. The only reason why I signed on to do this is because I really believe in his message and the way, in the way he gets things across. And hopefully you enjoyed this. Please share it and talk to people about it, and talk to me about it. Hit me up on social media. Let me know what you thought. Leave comments below the YouTube. You see that little thing down there. Leave comments down there about whether you liked it and shared it and all that kind of stuff. And I will talk to you soon. Thank you. Goodbye.